Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of the Dana White Contender Series breakdown, and we've got week number 9. It's already week number 9. If you guys have been tuning in with us all season, we have been picking up steam, picking up momentum as the season has gone on. We started off pretty good this year, but the reads were just so. And now, as we've been going on week after week, we've been getting more and more dialed. I feel like we've done pretty well with the reads, and the betting documents have been doing very well the last couple of weeks. So excited. Hopefully, we can keep the ball rolling this week. And you know, we can't go it alone. For years and years, I've been rocking it with my guy live on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel every alternate week. But now we got the duo cast. We got the double live stream with my guy Gordo Gambles, my brother from another. How are you?
Man, we're doing good. It's a bit of mixed feelings. We got 2 weeks left on the year, but we've been doing this for a few years. I know we're going to say our goodbyes, and right here next summer in August, we'll be back here breaking down some fights. So let's enjoy these last 2 weeks. Last week was honestly a very entertaining one. One of those ones where you sit back. There was some decent prospects to come from it. We're not going to talk about Canada's downfall. We're ready for the bounce back in week 10, and we get a week off with no peril this week. But it was a fun card last week, and hopefully it's another big, good one here. Some fun fights, some big favorites, but let's see how we align this week.
Heck yeah, my man. And here's the good news, guys. Number one, I haven't looked at the lines at all. I still have not seen them whatsoever. So it's going to be news to me. Each and every one that we look at, that should be fun. We'll break them down. You get my real reaction in real time to whatever these lines are, whether I think that they're right or whether I think they're wrong. I don't know if you saw it, but my guy, Jewish Better, I did send you a link. So if you want in, if you've got something to say about Contender Series, my brother, please join the panel. We'd love to have you. Our guy, Pierce, our brother from another, is down for the count today. He's on vacation. He's out and about. He's having a great time, and I'm sure he's going to be cashing tickets, but unfortunately, he could not make the walk this week. He's saving all his energy, all the charisma, all the aura, and potentially some cool screensavers in the background as well for next week, week 10. You won't want to miss it. And how do you make sure you don't miss it? Hit that subscribe button, do it early, hit that like button as well. Let's get as many people in here as we possibly can. And I'm really excited to break these fights down with you all. So without further ado, let's break down the first matchup of the night. And my guy, Gordo, I got to say, this is the last matchup that I broke down. You know me, I'm a very disjointed guy when it comes to breaking down these fights. Sometimes I start at the bottom, work my way up. Sometimes I start at the top, work my way down. Sometimes I just find a random fight in the middle and I'm like, this is the one I need to break down. I broke this footage down about 8 minutes before we got on the air. So these are the things that are freshest in my mind. I literally just watched these two guys. And what I came away impressed with is the following. I'll start off on this one, if you don't mind, because it's right on the brain. And you look back, the Tim Moore fight for Sean Gauci, really close fight. He went out there and basically just got out wrestled. He was a little bit young, inexperienced, and he got taken down by a guy who had 17 professional fights. It was a nip tuck fight, but he showed a lot of heart. He showed a lot of willingness, just was positionally a step behind, right? And sometimes that happens when you're taking on somebody with that much more professional experience than you have. Who's got the best win between these two guys on their resume? I don't think there's a question about it. A win over Steve Erceg has aged like fine wine, right? Steve Erceg has only been beat by top guys in the UFC. This guy, Sean Gauci, went out there and got a unanimous decision win, 29-28 on all three judges' scorecards against Steve Erceg. Was he in danger of being submitted late? Yes. Did he show a lot of heart and toughness and resolve to not get finished there? In my opinion, yes, he did. And I like this Sean Gauci guy. I think he's good. I think he's tough. I think he's well-rounded. I think he's solid. I think he's physical. And I think that he's going to be the bigger man when you compare him to his opponent, Anthony Drillich here. Anthony is a guy that fought a lot of his career at 135. If you watch this guy, he's a guy that has, clear power in his hands. I think he prefers to strike. I don't think he's completely incompetent on the ground. I've seen times where he gets taken down, works back up to his feet, scrambles a little bit. But I think, number one, he has a propensity to show his back. I think that lower level fighters have put him in danger of being submitted before at times. And I think that this is the kind of fight where those bad habits could come back to bite him. If you watch the Michael Manu fight, that was another fight where you saw him get out wrestled. He landed a lot of big shots early. He showed off his skills and his attributes. But what we did see from him is a little bit of an inability to dictate where the fight takes place. It's a lot of reaction. It's a lot of backing up, throwing while he's backing up, trying to avoid these takedowns. I just felt like he's not controlling the real estate enough in some of his fights. And so for me, my initial lean here is towards Sean Gauci. I'm curious what the odds are. I'm pulling up fightodds.io as we speak.
Drum roll.
is my inclination and my lean on this fight. Gauchi, I'm looking right now. He's a -180 favorite, so that does not surprise me. I think they've got the right man favored here. Drillich also struggled on the scale. One of the last things that I took in before this contest was, what we saw from a guy like Drillich on the scale, had to come back for that second weigh-in. My guy Gordo informed me. All I knew was that he looked pretty bad. He had the box of shame, and he's smaller, right? So maybe he's got a little bit more muscle density, right? Maybe that's something that we have to keep in the back of our mind. But I do think we've got to be, very cautious about this guy's willingness to expose his back against a guy who I think could probably make him pay for that. How do you feel about this matchup, Gordo? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great fight to get the night started. And we've said that about a lot of these matchups here on Contender Series this season. It's been like they've been setting the tone early. We know we've had some pretty good performance come out here, including a guy, Cody Haddon, fighting this week as someone who did start off the card as well. And now we do have ourselves two more Aussie fighters going out here and throwing down. And I do think both these fighters could have success at the UFC level. You go out there, do the tape. I am decently impressed by both of them. They both have a decent level of competition as well. I just think they've offered different styles. Now, before I break it down, I would like to do a little bit of defense for my boy Anthony Drillich. Yes, he was controlled in that fight. Let's give him credit. He was a 135er. He was controlled by a man who was at 135. It would be a little bit of a different dynamic here, but you do expect that guy coming down from 135 to be a lot larger. Not as much here. So I do think we have ourselves a very interesting one because of that. This one here to me is one where it's going to be the power of someone like Drillich, like you mentioned, type 2 muscle fiber. He's dense, he's thick, he throws with fight-ending intentions. And having 6 of those 8 wins coming by finish at his weight class is pretty impressive because he does end fights. That power in that hand is lethal. You don't often see that at the weight class. And he does have the ability to go out there and stop those fights. But aside from that, doesn't offer the most diversity when it comes to minute winning. I think he's someone who can be put on his back. He's someone who can be put against the cage. He's someone who can lose optics. And you look at Gauchi, he's kind of the opposite. Gauchi does have power. Do not get me wrong, but he's shown versatility. He's shown the ability to go out there. He's shown the ability to land volume, shown the ability to mix it up to the body, win optics, extending combinations. And I think in a situation like this, although you'll have to be ever cautious of that big power coming back from Drillich, the ability for someone like Gauchi to go out there, utilize his range and win optics that way, something that is really going to have to be important in this spot here. I think that when it comes down to picking a winner, I think the versatility of someone like Gauchi is someone who's going to carry him towards victory here. And although I am cautious of the power come from Drillich, and I don't think he's a pushover by any means, I just think Gauchi has more ways of getting it done, whether that be implementing some wrestling later on. I do think he will be the one initiating it, but even on the feet, the guy with more opportunities, the guy who mixes it up more, and the guy who I just think wins the visuals in terms of landing more volume, being on the front foot and dictating where this fight takes place, is going to be a guy like Gauchi, and I think he just has more versatility to his game. So not going out there and saying he's going to dominate this fight, I think it'll be very, very close. And with the questionable judging we did see at UFC 307, maybe I'm a bit cautious to play this one if I do expect to go to the decision, but one where I do think Gauchi is the rightful favorite, having more paths to get it done, and the side I will be picking this week.
There you go, my man. So we tend to agree on this fight. The other thing I'll note is Drillich had a couple split decisions. The Liam fight, kid from City Kickboxing, was able to push him pretty hard. And I think a lot of times he had to resort to his own wrestling against guys on the regional scene that he had a little bit of an advantage over. And I just don't think he has that here. You look back, and Gauchi's been a pro since 2014, Drillich only since 2017. These guys are both from the same part of the world. It's ironic they didn't fight at any point on their regional scene. Now they got to fly out to Contender Series to have this fight. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say they were scheduled to fight each other, if I'm not mistaken here. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Ooh, that's interesting too. Who pulled out?
I
That was back in 2022, and the event was postponed. Oh, so neither one of them can get blamed. That's kind of awesome. So yeah, we get to settle it in the UFC now, and we get to settle it in Contender Series with an opportunity for somebody to break through to the UFC. That's pretty cool.
That's because
and shout out to our guy Jewish Better. He says he's a little sick. He couldn't make it, but he appreciates the thought. And he's rocking with us in the chat. So shout out to him. Please go ahead, Gordo.
I was just going to say the reason that event was canceled, according to Tapology, was because the main event fighter, Shannon Ross, was signed to Dana White Contender Series. It's crazy how life comes full circle there.
Wow, there you go. Shannon Ross. What a crazy run that he went on, eh?
Yeah,
on a couple different highlight reels, but fun career.
Same card that Kevin Giussette was on too. It was a decent one. We got canceled, but here we go. We see the fights going at it anyways, and it'll be interesting to see how these fighters have developed in that time.
Absolutely. And I'm just looking at the prop menu, and I must say, I don't want to mush the market. So what I will do is I will definitely wait until these props open up on the domestics, but certainly think there's some lines that don't quite make sense to me fully. So I'm going to explore those a little bit closer. Certainly when we get off the air, I'll just leave it there. And you guys that have been listening closely to the breakdown, I hope you guys can put some context clues together, but we can't just spell it out because, the market's not fully developed yet. So I'd be happy to share that tomorrow on Twitter. I'll share my thoughts before the fight. If you're not following me already, get followed at LiamPicksFights. Try and drop good, helpful information on there. And I've been focused on the UFC because I was on my guy Clint's show earlier, but then I started tuning all my attention back to Contender series. And so I'm going to start dropping that information on Twitter in the very near future. You all can go ahead there. Shout out to my guy, the Jewish bettor, strategic ambiguity. He understands the process. Sometimes that's what you got to do in the interest of giving people good information on the show, but also not crushing the lines, right? We don't want to just, give out the information now while there are $250 limits on Bet Online when we know that tomorrow the domestics that normally have their head up their ass are going to open it at a better price. So that's all. We're just going to keep our cards close to the vest until everybody shows their hand. That's it. But in any case, guys, let's move to this next fight. We've got the top German prospect, Islam Dulatov, taking on Venilto Antunes. And, Gordo, I got to be honest, man. Watching Vitillo Antunes, I was not super impressed with his game. I think he's very wild. I think he's very reckless. I think he's fighting, a very killer be killed 50-50 type style. I don't think that's a very high ceiling for a UFC fighter. Could he be fun on a prelim or something like that? Go out there, swang and bang and take some risks. Yeah, I think that's possible, but I don't think the ground game's there. Honestly, I didn't love the heart that I saw in the one fight where he got no hooked, rear naked choked, and it just looked like a complete sham to me. He just gave up, in my opinion. Gordo, you're a slick mother effer. So if Gordo can read between the lines, then y'all can read between the lines. He knows what prop I'm eyeing. But in any case, guys, we're back to this fight, and we've got Islam Dulatov on the other side. And I think that if you look at the Islam Dulatov side, the danger is he did get taken down in his loss. He got kind of rode out on the ground there. That was early on in his professional career. He is kind of a long guy, big, lanky body. I always talk about those guys, good for striking, not always as optimal for grappling. It can work. When you're in triangles and things like that, you could try and make some more opportunities, maybe have an active guard. But in terms of getting taken down, it's just easier when guys have access to your hips. It could be tricky if you know how to use your length, but I don't know that he's very good at that. I think a lot of times you see him get backed up, straight-legged onto the fence, standing a little bit too upright, and that's just a recipe to get taken down. On the other side, though, I don't like the ground game. I don't like the cardio. I think the striking is reckless and not very technical, honestly. Like, he's got power. I do think he can knock out people, Antunes, but a lot of what Antunes was throwing was just wild shots. I thought after 3 minutes in the fights that I was watching, he started to look gassed, started to make bad decisions, started to give up worse takedowns with less resistance. So for me, I'm not sold on this guy at all. I haven't looked at the odds here, Gordo, but looking at the odds right now, it does not surprise me that Venilto Antunes is a massive underdog because I think the guy kind of stinks. What do you think?
Yeah, man, I tend to agree on something like this. I did not get the chance to tape Dulatov last time when he was supposed to go out there and fight Mang Ding, so this is a complete surprise to me. And I did tape Antunes first. I go out there watching. I'm like, you know what, the guy's entertaining. He'll go forward. He doesn't have the best defensive style, but he's very killer to be killed. I think on Dana White Contender Series, sometimes you go in there with an open mind. You're like, depending on who his opponent is, this guy could have some success because he does throw heavy as long as he's able to keep it on the feet. And then I watch Dulatov and I'm like, holy, like, this guy is a top prospect for a reason. He is fun. The same aggressiveness that Antunes has, Dulatov has that too, but just a bit more precision, way better defensively in his own right as well. And someone who is able to mix it up on the ground and has more versatility to his game that way. Dulatov is someone who I also expected to be taller in this matchup, but still is a very tall fighter for this weight class too, has a good frame for it, and just seems to be an athletic freak. Like, the guy is truly a good fighter, good physical guy, and a guy who can utilize not only his prowess on the feet with that range, but the ability to mix it up on the mat, the ability to take this fight where he has to go. And although he does throw a lot of reckless abandon going forward and being as aggressive he is, he's got the entertainment factor. He has all the tools to be a perfect Dana White Contender Series fighter, right? A guy who will go forward, a guy who will be aggressive, and a guy who can mix it up not only with devastating power on the feet, with a very slick submission game on the ground as well. And I think for that reason, he is someone who the UFC is trying to promote. He is someone who I think does have a matchup set up here for success. And against a guy in Antunes who not only has been knocked out, but has been Slovin stretched, has been submitted in multiple facets, a guy who I think can be broken and finishing these losses. I think they're setting Dulatov up here for success. Vanilto was scheduled to fight Carlos Prates, on the thing of talking about scheduled canceled bouts. Another one where I think they're feeding him to the wolves here, and another spot where I do think they are setting up Dulatov for success. Is there a world where Antunes goes out there, finds the chin of Dulatov? Maybe. Like, it's a fight, anything can happen, but I do think Dulatov has him covered in multiple aspects here, whether it be the minute winning on the feet with the optics, whether it be the forward pressure, the ability to knock him out. I do think Dulatov has success. But if he wants to take it to the ground, I think the ground success is there all day. I think Dulatov can get it done by multiple ways. I like his physicality. I like his ability to work in multiple facets of MMA. And I do think the ground success can be key for him here. If Antunes lands a couple shots, it'll be like, I'm just going to take this guy down. I'm going to see what I can do down there. Maybe I can pull off a Slovin stretch of my own right now. Probably not. But a guy who I do think can have some success down to the mat. And I do like what I'm seeing from Dulatov. So I agree the line being wide. But I am struggling to find paths for Antunes aside from a fluke KO. So give me Dulatov potential submission early as well.
I kind of have a gut feeling that like Dulatov is probably going to win in the first 2 rounds, but I really wouldn't be surprised if it's round 2. I think that this Antunes guy can probably take him down, honestly, in the first 2.5 minutes. I just don't know that he's going to have any success from top position. I don't really rate his ground game. I just think physically, the way these two guys match up, he kind of fights like a wild animal for the early going, and he throws like crazy wild hands and then tries to grab a hold of you. And I do think he could probably take Dulatov down. It's a small cage. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 7 minutes of this fight, for example, 8 minutes, something like that. What is the over-under set at here? Probably. Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah. So it's set at the 2.5, but really juiced to the under. I mean, that's kind of weird in and of itself. Fight goes the distance is plus 275 here. And Antunes has never lost a decision. So all that's kind of interesting to me. I'll think about this one a little bit more. I don't know that any props jump out at me as much on this fight as they did on the last one. I mean, the sub at plus 125, though, I'll just say that's disgusting. Yeah. That's not really like a price that's going to get you to jump out of bed, even though he's got 5 wins by sub. Like that just is not I'm telling you as a guy that bets a ton of sub props, it's the plus 125s that often shit the bet on you. Like that don't come through. I could tell you, I had a parlay once. It was Jalen Turner by sub at plus 900 and it cashed. What's his name by sub? I literally can't think of who it was, but 2 subs that were big plus money. Both cash. Maybe it was Holland by sub on the same card. And then the one that crashed was Andre Muniz against Uriah Hall. And he was on his back for 8 minutes, 9 minutes. It just did nothing with it. I'm telling you, it's always the one that looks the easiest from the sub perspective that doesn't hit. I'm just saying. So the decision at plus 400 caught my eye more than the sub at plus 125, honestly. But how do you feel, Gordo?
Yeah, you want to know what's weird to me, and again, I'm not here saying to hammer these minus 300s. Let's hear my entire statement here. But considering we have 2 fighters who are as aggressive as they are, a fighter in Antunes who has lost by finish the way it is, it's weird this line is still only minus 300 towards the under here. We have seen many fights recently with fighters who aren't as aggressive be minus 800, minus 750 to go out here and inside the distance. It does seem like a very interesting play. I do think more times than not, this fight does end inside the distance. I think the aggression from both sides leads to a finish one way or another. So I am interested to see what maybe a under 1.5 opens at or something else violence wise, because the 2.5 line seems like maybe they know something we don't.
It was Stolyarenko by sub. Shout out to my guy, Jewish Better. I think it was Stolyarenko by sub. But I'd have to go back and look. It was something like that. Now let me go back and look and see when Jalen Turner submitted Brad Riddell. And we're going to pull up this card. I'm 98% sure it was UFC 276.
That was on the Topuria the Volkanovski Holloway Fight 3 card.
Interesting. Let's see here. Jalen Turner. Oh, it was Jim Miller submitted Cowboy Cerrone. And then Andre. Yes, that's the one. Oh, wait, no, it was Stolyarenko. It was definitely Stolyarenko. Stolyarenko got the sub on the same card. Yo, shout out to my guy, Jewish Better. That was brilliant. And also, shout out to my guy, Jewish Better, on the JB special. A lot of people have been giving my guy grief in the comments. A lot of people have been giving my guy grief. And then what happened? 15 to what? 1,500? Absolute soldier hours. Court McGee by sub. Ryan Spann sub in round 1. If you listened to my shows last week, you heard the same talk. Sharp minds think alike at times. And that was a spot where you saw the exact breakdown that we talked about, the high elbow guillotine, the exact dynamics. And very proud of that read. And shout out to my brother, though. 15 to win, 1,500, not something you see every day. And he put it on stone, right? Before the event, tweeted it out. There for ridicule, right? If he misses, everybody's coming back with the bookmarks to tell him, go fuck yourself. What a clown you are. This is what people do. I'm telling you, if you've ever gambled publicly, I'll just let you know, people will come shit on you when you get it wrong. But when he get it right, let's go back and pay him the love and respect. He put it on ice before the fight. And I thought the same things were going to happen, but I didn't get 15 to win 1,500. I'll tell you, that was a great freaking read. And shout out to him. So I think that this is, oh my God. Damn, JB can read through the lines as well. So guys, I now have it on good authority that there's a bunch of readers in the chat. There's a bunch of people that can see exactly what I'm talking about when I'm breaking down these fights, and I hope that it turns out. Also, if you guys tuned into Lambo Plays last week, what did we give out? Court McGee by sub, Roman Dolidze inside the distance, and Aldo by KO. This close to bankrupting the bookies. So guys, we're going to keep taking swings at it. Hopefully we'll be back on the program again soon for an encore. But in any case, guys, I don't think this is the Lambo play fight of the night, honestly. Just looking at this one, unless you're going the decision route, you've got to go method and round. You got to get very specific. You got to look for an extended fight, something like that, in my opinion, because it's really just juice to the gills. And I think Dulatov's the right side. But just like generally speaking, guys, this is a true statement. My guy Moyes has said it in the chat a million times, and I don't know if he's here tonight, but guys, Euro trash grappling, real thing. Real thing you always got to be wary of. Sometimes the grappling looks very good in Germany or wherever that they're fighting, and then they come over here and they get submitted by somebody that they have no business on paper losing to. I don't think that's going to be the case here. I don't rate the other guy on the ground, but I'm just saying, if you generally take a guy from Brazil and a guy from Germany and you're like, oh, he's going to go out there and submit him in the first round, we're like, are you absolutely positive about that? So it's just something you want to be a little weary of. And we love all our German listeners. Shout out to our Germans. But I'm just saying, the Euro trash grappling, that's from a European. My man keeping his eyes to the grindstone. And he wants to make sure we don't lose money, getting overzealous. And guys, Melissa Mullins, recent example in the UFC, all the credentials in the world in BJJ, in mixed martial arts competition for the grappling. And then what happened when she got to the UFC? Nora Cornole said, hold this. Bing. So just something to keep in the back of our mind. Next up, my brother, we got Mario Pinto taking on Lucas Camacho. And shout out to Lucas Camacho. I think I was his 10th subscriber on YouTube. Guys, let's go ahead and show our guy, Lucas Camacho, some love. How many fighters upload their fights so you can find them on YouTube, right? Trying to make it a little easier for us Contender Series cappers. So shout out to this guy. Let's get him to 20. Let's get him to 100 subscribers. Let's get our guy monetized over here. But in any case, I really think this is a fun one. Let's kick into our guy Gordo first for the breakdown. How do you feel about this matchup, my man? We got the big boy swinging. What you think?
Well, I'm interested to see what happens when you do go check this line for the first time. It is one that is a bit wider as well, and you kind of understand why. I think you look at a fight like this, and there's two clear sides, right? There is the technical fighter, a fighter who I think has ability in all aspects, a guy who is maybe better suited for these fights that do go to the decisions, and guy Pinto, because he is so well-rounded in a lot of these facets. He can go out there, he can counter strike, he is very accurate with his shots as well, good shot selection, and when he does decide to put his pedal to the metal, is a pretty dangerous fighter. His opponent, Lucas Camacho, is the opposite. It's like Pinto's the type of guy you don't want to be locked in a cage with. Camacho's the type of guy you don't want to be locked in a dark alleyway with, right? Because the guy is just going to go forward and throw with fighting and intention. He does not have much defensive ability. He doesn't have much ability to do anything except for walk towards you and swing, try to take your head off. In the process, he can be countered, he can be hit, and I do think it allows for some potential flaws in someone like Camacho, and I do think that is why we're getting such a wide line here, but I do think it makes it for a very interesting fight dynamic. Mario Pinto kind of, I don't want to say that too much, but he does kind of give out the Waldo Cortez Acosta fight style, not in terms of the fact of his like the talent level, but more so like he doesn't always push for it. He's a guy who is content at the heavyweight division to pick his shots and go towards and stay towards the decision, right? And I think a guy here in Pinto, you want to see him go out there and be more aggressive, but he has shown some great fighting ability. He has the ability to go out there, land volume on the feet. He has the ability to go out there and defend takedowns and utilize and fight for 25 minutes, 15 minutes. And I think that the overall style that Pinto brings is something that is worth your money, right? A guy who will fight for it, a guy who has shown a well-rounded skill set in all facets of MMA, and a guy who I do think is very, very precise, very good footwork, very good movement, and a guy who, when he, like I said, when he decides to go for it, is very powerful. Whereas Camacho is more so offense first, defense second, wants to throw those big hooks, does not have that same sharpness that someone like Pinto has, does not have the same footwork, but the same aggression. So the way I see this fight playing out is pretty simple. Camacho's going to go forward. If he lands that big shot, he lands that big shot. But I think the elusivity of someone like Pinto, the volume, the counter striking, the technicality is going to lead him towards success here. And although I think the line may be a little wide, I think if we're comparing this line to the Dulatov line, I think it's much easier for Dulatov to pay off his number, whereas Pinto I think is going to be a bit harder. I still think that Pinto is a rightful favorite. I do think he has more paths to getting it done. I like his volume, I like his counter striking, and I do think he just has way more technicality over someone like Camacho, who yes will go forward, but will be a bit reckless while doing so. So give me the Pinto side. The way he gets it done, I'm still scared to choose. I did end up going in my own breakdown here saying decision, but I honestly think it's going to be a war of attrition. Camacho can only go forward too much. Maybe I'll switch that to a KO because I do think Pinto's able to build up the strikes and counter as Camacho continues to go forward.
All right.
And yes, okay. One last thing. We got to talk here, Liam, for a second, right? The face. Did you see the face off? They just stared at each other.
It's the longest face off of all time, apparently.
Yes, and that was great. I was watching it. I sent that to my dad, my best friend, who watches fight with me. I sent him a lot of this stuff, right? And he goes out there, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh my god! I sent it to him, so I watched it again. I'm like, cool. Wait, are they doing their weigh-ins in a buffet? Are they at a Vegas buffet for their weigh-ins? And you can't tell me they're not, man. They are. So you're telling me the UFC is evil enough to put fighters cutting weight, weighing in at a buffet? No wonder you have Drillage out here missing weight. That's all I gotta say. Or sorry.
You know what it is? They want to get him some food right after they get on the scale. But I'm looking at this guy, and man, let me just go ahead and see if this is accurate. I gotta be honest, brother. I'm a little bit surprised by the line here. Like minus 600 in this kind of matchup does seem quite wide to me. Listen, Camacho's up there in age, 31 years of age. But I believe he's been an underdog in his last couple of fights. Let me go and confirm that. I don't want to speak out of my ass, but it doesn't list it on Tapology, does it? Let's see here.
He was a favorite in his last one.
Yeah, it was a plus 150 against Guilherme Uriel. And what was he against Senna?
I'm only looking on fight odds here, and it does say he was the underdog to Costa, so maybe we got wrong here. Sorry, just say he was the favorite. Said he was minus 200 to Costa.
To Costa, huh? Who is Costa? Am I misunderstanding?
Guilherme Uriel Silva Costa.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize he had another last name. Huh. Maybe the line flipped there. It says it on Tapology. Maybe Tapology has it wrong. I'm really not sure. But yeah, I think that Tristan makes a great point in the chat. Let's be first clear about that. 31 is still kind of young for heavyweight. Yeah, definitely true. Then you look, they were even staring across the buffet. Of course they were. Two heavyweights. Where else would they rather meet? These two guys, they might be meeting at the buffet, win or lose tomorrow, you know? But in any case, I think that I look at these guys and, you know, I saw a guy in Mario Pinto. You hit the nail on the head, right? He's got 3 wins by decision at heavyweight. And I watched a few of them. A couple of them, I think even let me just go ahead and confirm this. So has he been scheduled for 5-minute rounds? Yes, he has been in the most recent one. So the Kasim Aris fight, you know, you see a guy that is very patient, you know, throwing his shots, looks to pick his shots okay, can get taken down, seem to have a decent ability to build back up to his feet. But again, he's fighting on the Levels Fight League. Do I really have a great amount of faith and hope in his abilities coming off of that performance? Shout out to Artem in the chat. Says they definitely want Pinto to win this. Absolutely. He is the A side here, 4.6 thousand followers, but He's young enough, right? Comes in with a decent enough record, but it just seems to me like a more volatile fight than minus 600 because Camacho, I will say, responds to adversity pretty well. Like he definitely was on the verge of being knocked out in that fight with Uriel, but he was able to take the shots, keep getting back up when he got taken down, and then he just tired him out and put it on him. And he's coming out of Novo União. It's not like he's coming from some nowhere gym. It's a very solid gym overall with a good pedigree. So he has less professional experience, but I think that fighting in the LFA is a pretty known quantity. Shuto, another known quantity. Levels Fight League, I'm not sure exactly what to make of that. So for me, it doesn't seem like a minus 600, and it's a clear dogger pass from a money line standpoint. I will do a little bit more tape and due diligence here, but let's go ahead and take a look at the prop market as my guy Gordo follows up with his thoughts. Please,
I just wanted to say, I was wrong. Camacho did close as a plus 160 underdog. There must have been a mistake on the page earlier. I went and looked up the original card. That was the same card that our boy Hugo Cunha was on. So I had to make sure we checked those odds.
Interesting. So my guy Tristan says Big Marcel said Pinto is training in the Netherlands. So that's one note. And then Artem says Pinto looks to have great skill for heavyweight, but he was moving backwards the whole fight against Aris and Sehik. I agree with you, man. That's what I'm saying. He's backing up and getting taken down a little bit by these guys that I don't rate as very high level. And Camacho seems to be a guy who's very within himself. A guy that seems to have some amount of confidence and ability to respond to adversity. So I just wouldn't rule him out here. That's all that I'm saying. And looking at the prop market, they've got him to win by KO at 8-1. They've got the Pinto decision at plus 175, which is quite low for a heavyweight. And I think that is probably Pinto's most likely path to victory, though I do think he could knock out Camacho. Let's look at what the KO line is. Pinto by KO is plus 105. I mean, I really don't think you're getting value on either one of those props either. The Camacho KO at 8-1, the submission at 12-1, and the decision is 6-1. So they're pricing the most likely outcome here as a Camacho decision if he's to win this fight. Yet the fight goes, they basically have both guys as like very likely to win by decision. And yet the fight goes the distance is plus 140. So, if I was going to play Pinto by decision at plus 175, I would way rather just switch off and take the goes the distance at plus 140. So that way, if it's a split decision, if it's a gross fight, all I have to sweat is the total as opposed to that extra 35 cents to see my guy get his hand raised. That's my,
what I
my
will
2
say
cents
though,
on
man.
it.
Yeah, what I will say is we do have heavyweights at the end of the day. And although I did originally mention some Pinto decision value with the way that he has been tentative going forward, it seems like it's a pretty narrow line, right? You can get minus 175 inside the distance. I bet you can get a better line when domestics open up ends by KO line. I think that's actually the most probable outcome here. Although Camacho has been pretty durable, he will go forward. He's a guy who's going to force exchanges. And if you're forcing Pinto to work, I think Pinto's going to have the opportunities to land. I think he's going to have the opportunity to land the bigger shots here. And I think Camacho's path to victory is utilizing that forward pressure and looking to find the chin as well. So if their face-off is any indication that they're going to go after it and swing, if we get a decent line here on the KO line, I'll probably play it. With heavyweights, we do have some variance here. And I do think it's one that more times than not, we do get that KO because of the pressure that Camacho brings. It will probably be Pinto finding that counter shot, but still a very interesting fight and one that I honestly expected to be a little bit more shaded toward the under.
Yeah, that would give me a little pause here, right? Especially a heavyweight fight, but maybe people are overzealous on heavyweight overs. But I think on Contender Series they've been pretty strong to the under these heavyweight fights, so that's something to keep in the back of our mind. Past performance not necessarily indicative of future results, but it is certainly worth keeping our eye on. The other thing I will just note about Mario Pinto is I know people are saying they're not sold on Novo União, maybe they're having a downfall. I mean, shout out to DG. I think that makes some sense. But the one thing I'll notice, what in God's green earth is Fight Zone London, right? Like I'm looking at this guy's Instagram and, these aren't super familiar faces to me, the guys he's training with. So it seems like they're all like regional level guys. And again, no disrespect there. But certainly looked like he got some work in at Bang Tao. But again, I don't recognize his training partners specifically. So I'm sure the coaching was good. But I don't know.
Yeah, I can't help you
Erdem
much
says,
on that.
thank you, Danilo Vojvetkin, for making me look like an idiot. Hey, been there, brother. Yep, absolutely. Feel you on that one. So, Gordo, did you have any closing thoughts on this one, or should we move along to the next matchup, my brother?
I think we're mostly good on this one. Maybe we'll see if I get towards an underplay here, but I do have to favor Pinto. Maybe not to this extent, but a guy who I do think gets it done more times than not. Let's just hope that there's actually more engagement than just staring eyes, because they're locking eyes, man. Maybe they'll do something else inside the cage. Who knows? They were intent on having a stare competition. I wonder who blinked first.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll note here is when I'm just looking at this fight, I think to myself, like, a guy like Mario Pinto does seem to me like a candidate who could come on the Contender Series, lose, and then come back in a year. Whereas Camacho, this is probably his only opportunity. Maybe he gets another one because he's so inexperienced as a professional. But just looking at the trajectory, like, he's probably a guy that at 31 years of age needs to make his move now. So that's the one thing to me that would also give me pause with this huge favorite price tag. I think the guy's going to come out fighting wild and aggressive, maybe because it's Contender Series and the incentive structure is a little different. And that's the one thing where we know, if you tried to handicap who's the better grappler, we all would have said Bailey Schoenfelder was the better grappler, but yet Danilo Vojvetkin hit him one time in the head and they're big guys. So then he was able to grab a hold of his neck pretty easily. Would it be that surprising if one of these guys clubbed each other, for example, and just grabbed each other's neck? No, it's heavyweight MMA. It's very volatile. Neither one of these guys, in my opinion, is super high level. So Pinto's probably the better prospect long term. But looking at the money line, I do think it's over aggressive, and I'm not sure that this is the kind of guy you want, anchoring parlays at -600. But everybody to their own. Next up, my brother, we've got Cody Steele taking on Chasen Blair, and I haven't looked at the lines, Gordo, but I'm guessing that Cody Steele is a substantial favorite. He's less of a substantial favorite than I thought. And yeah, honestly, I don't think Chasen Blair is a bad fighter. I think the danger for Cody Steele, as I mentioned in his last fight with Kamel Otoni, was if he was going to come out here and, go ahead and just make it a swinging match on the feet. If you do that, you're going to give another guy a chance to win. I think Chasen Blair's got power in his hands. I think he's a willing striker. But to tell you the truth, I think his wrestling and grappling leaves a little bit to be desired. I think he's also there to be hit in exchanges. I don't think he's the fastest fighter I've seen. And I think that if Cody Steele wants to take this guy, but basically I'll put it this way. If Hassan Asanzada can submit you, Cody Steele 100% can submit you in my mind, period. And on top of that, I think that Cody Steele can knock him out in the first round. Like, I think that Chasen Blair is a guy that is willing to get back up when hit. He's a tough guy, but I think he can be blasted. I think he can be caught flat-footed. I think he's a little bit slower than Cody Steele. So I think the more explosive athlete, the bigger guy, the guy who hits harder, and the better grappler is Cody Steele. I think he's going to win this fight, my man. How about you?
Hey, man, I'll power too. I remember that last fight against Otani. I was on Steele there. Don't really know what happened, but I do think this is a very fun matchup. I did end up giving Chasen Blair more credit than I originally thought I would. The guy actually has a pretty decent skill set. I think he is a solid counter striker. He does have power. I think he does have a very good offensive grappling game, and I think he's someone who can have success. I think he can be a very good hammer a lot of time when he is facing this lower level of competition, but he does have his flaws, right? The guy can be hit in his feet. He keeps his hands low. He's there to be hit. Although he's very good offensively on the mat, and he is very quick to lock things up, very opportunistic finisher, a guy who doesn't really work through the positions the best defensively, as we saw in the Hashimazada fight. And although I did not really like his wrestling, he is a D1 wrestler at the University of North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, there, in someone in Chasen Blair. So a guy who does have that in his repertoire, and although his offensive wrestling hasn't looked great, someone who has competed at a higher level and someone who does have that background to go out there and wrestle at a high clip. With all those accolades going towards him, the decent counter striking, the solid offensive jiu-jitsu, and that D1 wrestling background, I think a lot of the stuff that he does, Cody Steele just does it better, in my opinion. I think the guy who's landing with more fight, any intention in the feet with a better hands is going to be a guy like Cody Steele, a guy who I think can absorb damage better on the feet as well, as Cody Steele does have some decent hardware there on the feet as well. And then on the mat, the guy, although Chasen Blair has had great opportunistic submission, has looked great offensively, the credentials, the history that someone like Cody Steele has, the ability to scramble like he does, his physicality, his brain and ability to work to position, I think does excel someone like Blair on the ground. And I do favor Steele there as well. So with the physicality edge going to Steele, the striking on the feet, a guy who is working on those hands, and the grappling shall I go there. I like Cody Steele here. I think he's able to go out there and get it done. I do think Blair can be a very dangerous fighter against these lower level of competition, but Cody Steele seems to be a guy that you're looking to promote. The way Dana White was talking about him when Otani dropped out made me think that, okay, this is a guy they want to bring here to succeed. He has the jiu-jitsu history. He has the improving hands, and he has a good camp around him to go out there and have some success. And I think in this matchup here, he's going to have a lot of advantages for him to go out there and get it done. I do agree with him being the favorite, and we'll see where this line goes, but a guy who I do pick to win.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at the prop market or anything here. I want to give Chasen Blair his respect. Like, he doesn't look like a bad fighter to me, but Hassan Zada is, for me, an opportunistic grappler, but unexceptional. I think as an athlete, he's unexceptional as well. Not trying to be dismissive, just calling it the way I see it, right? I think he's made a lot of what he has, right? He's overperformed expectations and these kind of things. He's done a great job, but even that Mantello fight, he looked like he was on the verge of falling apart 10 times, and then Mantello just fell apart harder. And when you look at this kind of fight, what I see from a guy like Chasen Blair is, number one, the Hassan Zada fight. He was getting clipped a little bit, right? He was exchanging with Hassan Zada. He landed a couple decent strikes, but Hassan Zada was getting off on some of his own shots. And then the way that, he started to react was he was like, let me wrestle, let me grapple, let me force that part of my game. And when he did that, instantly Hassan Zada was like, okay, you want to wrestle? I'm going to roll to my jiu-jitsu. And it was over. And for me, here's the problem. If he gets submitted there, but he went through all the right progressions, no problem. You're supposed to put a foot on their ass and try and kick away. Try and do something to get away from this knee bar. And instead, he was like sitting there like looking at him. You know what I mean? Like, he was like getting stretched and like, trying to react and like looking at his coaches. I didn't like the visual there. It just didn't seem like he trained a lot of leg locks. And so you go against a guy like Cody Steele, and I think his preference would be to go out there and swing with the hands, right? He's fallen in love with his hands a little bit. I think Chasen Blair is going to get hit and force him to wrestle and grapple a little bit. And I just think Cody is like reactively way better in those situations. Like, I know that this guy wrestled at a decent level, and you could see it when he's moving around. But when I saw, interesting. I can see either, to be honest. This guy was training with the Tackets. The level of grappling is different. I watched him live last few times. The shots sound loud. Yeah, dude, I'm thinking to myself, like, the speed, the transitions, the technicality, it's all going to favor Cody Steele. And I also think he's like more physical, more intense, a little more prepared. The one thing I'll note, guys, this guy Chasen Blair is fighting a lot of Europeans. And again, we just talked about there can be very good, talented Europeans, absolutely. But the Cage Warriors scene is notorious for these guys coming in with a lot of experience, dominating on the Cage Warriors scene. And then they can't out-wrestle or out-grapple the worst guys here, right? And I'm just looking at, this isn't the worst guys here. This is a legit stud who could just stop doing MMA today and go back to competitive jiu-jitsu and fit right in. So I think he's going to win this fight, and I think that he could definitely submit Chasen Blair, period, point blank. Looking at the line, Cody Steele by sub is plus 250. Not the greatest price you've ever seen. The KO's plus 500. I think he could do that. So, yeah, maybe I'm just looking towards the ITD. I think Cody Steele is going to finish this guy. So
and I think that ITD line is great as well. I think our method of victory is going to be a bit different here. I 100%
Will Curry on this show. Never forget.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, we'll talk about that another time. That's for sure.
I'm sorry, bro.
I think when we go out here,
I believed in my Brazilian brother.
We had Jordan. We had Jordan by decision plus 700. We're okay with that. We'll talk about that in a good way. But here in this spot here, I completely understand that there is 100% sub opportunities. I think that he has the opportunity to grow down there. If there are grappling exchanges, Steele's quick. I think there's opportunities. But you can't tell me that plus 500 line isn't juicy. That is actually the only bet I have locked into this card so far, is that plus 500. You look at something like that, and it's a 16% indication on a guy who has fallen in love with his hands, on a guy there in Blair who does keep his hands very low. Although Steele has this BJJ repertoire, he has the ability to go out there and knock him out, and he has fallen in love with that striking. And I do think that the most, although the sub advantage is huge as well, the largest advantage I see so far is going to be that power that is given on the feet and lack of defensive ability for someone like Blair. So I think a Steele KO, it happens way more often than a 16% indication. So that plus 500 is looking pretty good. And hey, that doesn't only have to come on the feet as well. Positional TKOs could work. If you're giving up opportunities for leg locks, you're giving up opportunities for ground and pound as well.
Yeah, and I think, without giving away the whole game, I think the round props could be an interesting way to play it as well. I don't know that this one's going the full 15. I'll just put it that way. Shout out to our guy Artem. He says, I didn't believe in the boy Jordan. I should have seen the vision. Well, don't worry. We could fade him all together in the UFC, but he was able to do the job when we needed him to. And hopefully we could get another great betting opportunity with him in the near future. But shout out to you, my brother. It was a weird fight, honestly. I thought it was very binary, right? I thought Will Curry could smash him early because he has that kind of power, but he honestly just was non-committal to his own strategy and just left himself, I felt, in no man's land in that fight. Not a great showing from him. So hopefully he goes back to the drawing board. Still a young guy, still a lot of experience. So bright future if he can put it all together. But just from what I had seen on the regional scene, I was like, if this guy goes long, we know one thing, he is gassing. And that is just something that I always keep in the back of my mind. ABCs, they always bet on cardio. And if I can't trust your cardio, then it's going to be hard for me to lay chalk. All right, guys. Last but not least, we've got 3-0 Islam Masraf taking on Artem Vakitov 2-1. The one loss on his record, guys. If you haven't went back and watched it, it was an elbow dislocation. Kind of just a weird outcome. I honestly, I've seen other guys get hurt and just keep trying to push it. You know, this guy was kind of like, I'm hurt, and just like saw his way out. So again, there's nothing you could take away from him, right? It's a fight. If you can't use both your limbs, you're probably just going to see your way out for self-preservation. But it is the kind of thing that always lingers in my mind. You know, somebody saying, you know, I'm good on this. But you look at his skills, they're there, right? You just watch the fight that he has with Pereira, right? You watch his kickboxing matches. The guy has power. He's got an ability to throw in combination. He's very, well-rounded in terms of maybe not his wrestling and grappling is pure, but in terms of his takedown defense, it looked somewhat solid. It also didn't look like it was disjointed from the rest of his game. What do I mean by that? I mean, he was going like tilt the guy over into his back, then get into the mount position, and then rain down ground and pound, use the leverage and the skills that you have, right? He's a very powerful striker. So get to a dominant position, impact your opponent from there, getting some experience, mixing it up on the ground. Does he look like a elite operator on the ground? Far from it, right? If you look at his work, I would say you could see from the mount that he takes in his fights, he's not the cleanest grappler, right? He's kind of a little bit too upright. Maybe somebody a little bit slicker could buck him off, but he's big. He's heavy, right? He's got the big back, and he's powerful on the feet, man. I think that if Islam Masraf exchanges with him on the feet, of course, it's two big guys throwing at each other. He could clip him. I think that's a huge, disastrous mistake for him. I think his best chance to win is to try and mix it up with the grappling. I think Islam Masraf showed off a little bit more aggression, especially with his submission game. Maybe positionally, he's a little bit more loosey-goosey, but you saw that he's super aggressive for the guillotine, right? And he was able to eventually pull it off, but he was looking for it multiple times, and he was creating some doubt in his opponent's mind. So if you try and mix it up, cage push this guy, wrestle, grapple, put your head down, he's going to try and make you pay. And then when you look at, how these two guys interact, this is a heavyweight fight, according to Tapology. Shout out to Tristan in the chat. He's asking. And obviously, you look at these two guys and they both look like they could maybe cut to 205 with the right diet and the right exercise and the right meal plan and all these things. Interesting. Oh, shout out to Artem. He says Tapology changed the weight class a couple times. It ended up being a 205. Okay, thank God. Because I was going to say these guys both don't look like heavyweights. So being 205 makes sense. Both guys weighing in under the 206-pound limit for the light heavyweight non-title fight bout. So I think that this should be an interesting one. Gordo, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, my brother, as I pull up the odds, which I have not seen yet. But I'm guessing that the Glory kickboxing guy with the credentials is a big favorite here.
Yeah, I wonder who's going to get the hype after a Alex Pereira title defense of that magnitude last weekend, right? That seems to be a common trend, though. A lot of these fighters seeing the Adesanyas, Cesar Almeidas, the Alex Pereiras having success, and they're like, hey, my turn. Let's get over here. Let's have some fun. Do some kickboxing. And typically, I don't go out there and watch too many of these kickboxing fights, too many of these Glory fights, but man, like there's no fight tape on this guy. Like I had to go out there and I watched the what is it? Almost an hour fight time cage in the cage against someone like Alex Pereira, and there was some fun fights. This guy seems to have a lot of skills, got a lot of power in it. The fight's a little different than Pereira. He doesn't always like to be at range. A guy who's going to be up there closer, who's looking to utilize those big power shots, who kind of builds the fight goes on. Had a lot more success late against someone like Pereira and someone whose base seems to be that power shot, the volume, and just the ability to go out there and fight in close. He made his last opponent quick with the leg kicks. He has shown the ability to rain some good ground and pound as well. And the guy seems like a very solid striker, which is obvious to come with the pedigree he does have, but a guy who is pretty dangerous and who does have the ability to finish fights pretty early. The one thing that you do see from the Islam Mazraf fight is like, all right, let's put on some tape. Let's watch the last fight. That's the viral knockout. That's the one where everyone's like, oh, this is a fixed fight. This guy's just walking out there. His opponent did not want to be in the cage at all. Groogy, I think was his name. Just walked out there, walked out. He's like, it's a normal Tuesday. We're going to sit out here. And boom, head kick, knocked out. And I'm like, hey, all right, that's how a one goes over there and gets it done. So threw that one out the window as well. But the guy who does look to have solid power, a guy who, of course, doesn't have that same kickboxing pedigree, but a guy who does have the ability to go out there and land with fight-ending intention as well, who does have some kickboxing bouts on his record as well. As a whole, this seems to be a fight between two primary strikers who, yes, both have power, but just a little bit more history behind their skill sets. And although, as Artem is alluding to, a wide line, still one where you have to favor, in my opinion, a guy like Artem here, no pun intended, a guy like Vakatov, a guy who is going to go out there, utilize the striking in close, a ton of control, ton of precision in that striking, and a guy who just has, I think, a better ability to process these striking exchanges, having seen more of them. I think he's got good leg kicks to win from the outside as well. I think he can close that distance and win the optics with his power and tight. And although someone like Islam, I think, is no slouch, not at all, it's just hard me seeing him going out there and just outstriking him or landing that powerful shot when you have the durability and the history of someone like Vakatov. So I did pick him to win here. I didn't see enough grappling from Mazraf to be like, all right, this guy's going to go out here. He's going to test the ground game of this kickboxer and see what he's really like. I haven't seen that be a big base for him. So in a fight that I think primarily plays out on the feet, I'm going to take the credential kickboxer, a guy that I think they want to promote, a guy who I think, you can sell fights being like, this guy is the last guy to beat Alex Pereira. And I think for that reason, he is someone who is set up here for success. I do not have the most bullish take on this because I think there's still a ton to be learned from both these fighters. So anyone taking the shot here on the dog, I commend you, all power to you. But a spot where I do have to lead with the A side, in my opinion, and take the more credential kickboxer.
Yeah, man, I think definitely we got the right guy favored. I think you could quibble about the price, right? Like I think it may be a little price prohibitive. We always talk about, do you have the skills to cover the price? And for me, that means multiple paths to victory. It means reliability, cardio, all the kind of check boxes. And I do think he could be tested in new ways in this fight. The guys he's been fighting, I mean, Siavus Salakov, who he got on the ground, that guy's 0-4 as a professional. He's really not being tested. The Kahambev fight as well. You look at that guy, he's 1-1 as a professional. He's fighting Uzbek regional talent. And maybe he has all the abilities that he's going to need to win this fight, but I do have some concerns about him long-term. Very few pro MMA fights, right? And we saw Alex Pereira get submitted by Otoni, the guy who didn't even make it through Contender Series, right? Was supposed to fight Cody Steele and ducked out at the last second, which all love and respect to Otoni. He just said like, hey, guys, this career is not for me. I realized it today. Thanks anyway. Appreciate the opportunity. And he bounced. And, no shame in that. But it's like, okay, you look at the Pereira fight. He was able to take him to the ground and just submit him. Why? The inexperience. Now he probably wouldn't be able to do that. But Pereira was new to the game, and Pereira was swinging wild, and he got himself a little tired. And I do think that if you look at Islam Mazraf, he's from France, right? So we talk about Euro trash grappling. That's always a possibility. But you look at the GOOOO fight, that guy, I don't think he's very talented, right? I think you could argue that's a fixed fight. That guy's 5-2. Right? He goes out there and he's won a few professional fights, and he kind of just phoned it in that one, never really put his hands up to defend, got clipped with a high kick. So you throw that one out of the sample. Then he goes out there against Grondin, made that one look easy. The fight that was difficult for him was the Azamat Abukhanov fight. But even there, he did show off the guillotine ability. That guy has responded by coming back with a win in Aries FC, got back into the winning column. So the guy's 5-0. He's beaten the opponents that are in front of him. He's shown off a little bit more of a ground game in terms of offensive efficiency than his opponent. So I definitely think that you favor, Artem. But I think the price is a little bit prohibitive here as well. I think that I would rather look for a not to go the distance, a violence type of prop, because I do think that Mazraf, he's unknown in terms of how he's going to look. If he gets put on the ground by this guy, I think he could get shelled, right? Like I think if this guy gets on top of him and he goes for a shitty takedown and goes for that guillotine and the guy passes his guard, I think Artem could just beat him up from on top. I also think Artem could knock him out on the feet. He does throw pretty tight combinations. He could throw that spinning kick to the body that a lot of people don't see coming. He's very interesting with his style, but all those spins, as well as the fact that he likes to close down the distance. Here's the last thing I'll note. We talk about styles people bring from kickboxing. Cesar Almeida, the reason I liked him when he had first come to the UFC is you watch his fights back with Pereira and you watch his other fights back, and he's a slick operator in the clinch. He can move there. He can rotate people. He's very strong in the clinch. And Artem is not a bad clinch fighter at all. He does like to operate in there. But the one thing is, I would say at distance, a lot of his defense in kickboxing relied on the big gloves. And if you guys watch kickboxing, a lot of people stand like this, right? Like they keep a pretty tight guard. It's way different than mixed martial arts because why? Mixed martial arts, you got a 4-ounce glove. Even if I keep my hands here, somebody throws at my temple, I get caught, right? So some guys keep it here. Some guys keep one hand up, one hand low. Some guys are trying to paw away at your hand before it ever gets close. The striking is a little bit different, right? The way people engage, the distance management. So a guy who's had, 5 fights, amateur and pro in, mixed martial arts against a guy who's mostly been kickboxing and doing these striking matches, I do think that could just end up being some awkward grappling exchanges and it could just look like a silly fight. Alex Pereira had said in his interviews, he's like, listen, people think everybody's going to be like me and Izzy and these guys, and it's not going to be like that. And I do think there's some truth to that, right? Dylan Salvador, Glory Kickboxing guy came over. Belagioki just beat him, within an inch of his life. The guy who just got choked by Dylan Duncan, right? It's like these kind of guys, they're hit and miss, right? Giga Chikadze started off his career great. Then Calvin Kattar said, hey, let me audit you real quick as a plus 200 underdog. It's been, tough sledding ever since. So again, the Jamal Emmers fight, if it had went a different way, maybe we're never talking about Giga Chikadze as this top 15 guy. And that was a nip-tuck decision where Jamal Emmers realized he knew how to wrestle, 8 minutes into the fight. And I think that when you look at a fight like this, if I'm in the corner of Islam Mafrov, I'm saying, hey, buddy, let's not try and find out who's the better striker here, okay? We kind of have a good inclination about that. Let's see if we can wrestle and grapple this guy like our life depends on it and see what he's made of. Because here's the thing. If this guy gives up an easy takedown in the first minute and a half, is the live line going to be plus 375, plus 400? Or is it going to be minus 110? Like, it's probably going to be minus 110. So it just seems to me like I would favor Artem for the obvious reasons that every fight starts on the feet. He's the more credentialed guy there. He's got way more experience in that stand-up portion. He's the more known quantity there. All those things are positives. But for me, a guy who's relentlessly attempting guillotines in his fights and like showing off that he's not a complete zero on the ground against the kickboxer, it just seems to me like those are the kind of archetypes we know can go wrong, especially in the Contender series at a low level where neither guy has that much experience. That is just for me a long-term angle. So I'll do a little more tape and due diligence here, but there's limited tape to watch, right? Like how much can you really get in terms of information on this fight? Low-level fights for both guys, but I'm going to try and dig into the amateur footage, whatever I can get my hands on for this French character and see if his grappling is going to translate here. Because if it's not, I think he's probably getting schlumpoed. But I think that if he can get the grappling going, it's anybody's fight. And that's for me where the fight gets interesting. Do you have any closing thoughts here, Gordo, before we kick it to the recaps?
I think you just got to look at the prop market and tell me what you think about that. Minus 475, Vakitov wins inside the distance. Minus 400 to win by KO. Minus 150 in round 1. It seems like they are anticipating some early violence. So I agree with Vakitov. I don't think there's a line I can physically play. But a spot where I do favor him and get it done. I just have to gather more information on both these fighters. I just think there's so much to learn about both of them.
Guys, is my mic messed up? I don't know if he's talking about me or Gordo, but if the mic is messed up, please let me know. I'd love to fix it. I think all my settings are normal. Everything should be gravy. Let me just double check. Test. Yeah, it looks like everything's coming in good on my end, but if there's a problem, guys, please let me know. Okay, everybody says sounds good with the audio. Okay, I'm sorry, Steve. I hope that it works out for you, brother. Okay, everybody can hear us. Perfect. So then I think what we should do, my man, is let's move along to the recap, the quick picks and predictions section. My man, Gordo, why don't you start us off? We'll start from the first fight and work our way on up to the top. What do you got, my man?
Of course, man. I do think it's a very, very fun card. I think it's one where we do have some big favorites. I hate for picking so much chalk here, but a lot of times you gotta stick with your reads. And that read does start with Sean Gucci to start it off. Gauchi, sorry, a guy who I do think just has more paths to getting it done. Drillage does have a ton of power. He is someone who you definitely do not want to stand in front of a right hand from, but a guy who is, I think, more limited to that. I think you look at the overall skill set, and she has the opportunity to go out there and potentially wrestle, but more times than not, utilize that volume, have more decision-winning metrics, have the ability to mix up the levels as well, and be a fighter who I just think is more well-rounded, who wins the optics that way. And although I do think that, Drilic has the opportunity to go out there and land that KO shot, Sean has the ability to go out there when the optics as this fight goes on, utilize that physicality, utilize that size he does have, and have the opportunity to go out there and like I said, win minutes, win optics, and probably win a decision more times than not. We did allude to a probably we both might like there, but a fight that I do think is a pretty good one between two fighters who I do think can have some decent success here at the UFC level. So I'm happy to see where they go. I did side with the favorite here just for them having more paths. Next fight up, Dulatov and Tunes. I'm on Dulatov here. A guy who I just think set up for success. I mean, he is the guy they're bringing in to win this one here. A larger favorite, but a guy who just rates out as the better overall athlete. The guy with more path to win as well. And although he has that very forward, fan-friendly pressure on the feet, the guy was very active on the ground as well, facing a guy who's been finishing all his losses in Antunes. Antunes does throw with fight any intention, so you have to be worried about that. But aside from him landing that perfect shot, I do think he's outworked on the ground. I do think he's out-volumed on the feet, out-paced, out-pressured. And I do think Dulatov's rightful favorite. He should get it done early. Next fight up, Pinto Camacho. This is another one that's tough for me to call because we do have some big boys out here. They're falling in love with each other's eyes. They're getting lost in there. But two guys who I do think more times than not are going to go out there and put on a pretty entertaining affair, likely due to the style that Camacho brings. Camacho is going to go forward. He's going to force these exchanges. In doing so, he is going to realize that he's going to be at a pretty big technical disadvantage here to a guy like Pinto. Yes, Camacho does go forward. Yes, he's a pretty good offensive fighter, but is there to be hit, is there to be countered, and the footwork, the technicality, the diverse striking of someone like Pinto is what I think is going to carry him to have some success here. If Pinto is able to go out there and be forced to exchange, he can be very deadly, and for that reason, I do favor him here. I also lead towards some potential violence in this spot here. If this line continues to close, it is still a big boy affair. It is still one I think people are going to go out there and exchange it. So with the pace Camacho brings and the technicality advantage I think Pinto has, I do think one guy's going to sleep. I do think Pinto, but the line may be wide. Steele Blair, I love this fight. I think Blair is better than what people are giving him credit for. I think he has the wrestling pedigree. He has the ability to be a very good offensive submission grappler. He has some decent counter strike in his own right. But everything I think he does, I think Steele does it a little bit better. And I think that not only you add that, but you add the fact that Steele is someone who is, talked about by Dana White, a guy who is a more known commodity. I do have to favor Steele here. Although Blair has some good offensive jiu-jitsu, he's been put in precarious situations, he's been submitted and hasn't thought the best through them. And I think not only is Steele quicker there, but a lot quicker on the feet. And I do think Blair keeps his hands down low, is there to be hit, is there to be put to sleep. And the offensive pace, the physicality in this submission game all lead me to believe that Steele should be the favorite. KO line plus 500 is something I'm liking there. Give me Cody Steele. In the main event, my least favorite one in terms of picking a side. I think the line may be wide, but I just don't know enough about these fighters to give a pretty solid pick on this one. So I don't know if I'll get there in the betting market. I did side towards the kickboxer there, the more credentialed guy, the most recent guy to beat Alex Pereira in Vatikov. And I do think it is going to be a really fun fight. I think he has the striking pedigree and what I predict to be a striking affair. I just have not seen enough from either fighter to make a really bullish lead on this one. I do pick Artem to get it done. I do think he has the power, the ability to make reads, and the better technicality and experience on the feet to win the fight. I'm just excited to see it go down, though. So I think it's a fun card as a whole. I think this could be a great main event as well. I think it's to be very entertaining. Just not the most bullish read on these last guys. But aside from that, I really do like the card.
There you have it. The quick picks and prognostications from our guy, Gordo Gambles. If you guys would like the condensed version of the show, we do clip this up after the show each and every week. We hope that you're here for the whole breakdown. We hope that you guys enjoy talking about these fights as much as we do, but I know some of you guys are pressed for time. So if you enjoy those clips, make sure you drop a like. It does take a little bit of extra time, effort, and energy, but we're happy to do it for the people that are looking to tune into the show and just don't have the time. So God bless you all. Hope that you guys have enjoyed. Without further ado, guys, let's get into my quick picks and prognostications for the fight card this week, starting, of course, with the first fight of the night. And we've got the all Anzac affair, right? We've got the Australians going at it, and this should be a fun fight. The guys that are flying over here, both of them from, far reaches of the world, coming over to the Apex Center to do battle. But I have to side with Gauchi here. He seems to me to have just a little bit more savviness, a little bit better wins, a little bit more physical, a little bit bigger guy. If he doesn't get clipped on the chin, I think he wins this fight. His opponent's got some power. He does fight out of, I believe a switching stance. I think he often fights southpaw. In this picture, he's standing out of an orthodox stance, but I definitely saw him fighting out of southpaw on some of the tape that I watched. So it should be a really interesting contest in my view, and I'm excited to see this one shake out. But I will just note that I saw, opportunities for this guy to get finished in the past. He's been able to make it through a lot of those bad spots. He's tough, but I do think he can be put in compromised positions, no doubt about it. The next fight on the card, guys, I really was surprised, that this Antunes guy made it to the Contender Series. No disrespect to him. I think this is a setup fight. I don't think they really want this guy in the UFC. I do think he's got a fun killer be killed style. Only one fight gone to decision. So that is his pro, right? It's kind of like a Brentis Hiberio, right? A killer be killed style. Going to go out there and put on fun fights more often than not, but maybe just not that high level in terms of skill, a little bit more reckless, a little bit more wild, a little bit more fanfare than substance. And I think on the other side, Dulatov, a real prospect, a guy who's going, from an important emerging market. And I do think he looks like the better fighter. I think he looks like the better physical athlete, but frankly, he did leave a little bit to be desired in the takedown defense, in my view. I think he's gotten slightly better, but for me, it's a slight prove-it spot at the price. I think he should win the fight. I think he should be heavily favored, but I do think also that you don't want to get caught speeding. It is still the Contender Series. The other guy does swing heavies. For as faulted as he is, he goes for takedowns, he goes for big punches on the feet, and then he gasses out in 4 minutes. So if you can get a live shot on Dulatov, if the price comes down a little bit after some crazy exchanges, I think that might be an interesting way to play this one. The next way up, guys, is a fight where I think the underdog is live once again. I think Pinto has a decent skill set. I've seen him win 3 fights in one night before. I've seen him face plant dudes. He's got a decent ability, but a lot of times he's going to decision. And one thing I'll note, Dana White and them typically don't love to see guys that can't finish regional fights because it means that your chances of finishing UFC level fights are greatly diminished. And I do think he could finish this fight. His opponent's been rocked before. His opponent's been wobbled before, but his opponent has shown pretty good reactions to those sequences where he's gotten back up to his feet when he's hurt, right? Like the referee says, you got to move. He moves, gets back up, keeps working. He's been in bad spots, fought off the bad spots, got back up, kept showing heart. And then he was able to turn it around on the guy, and he was an underdog. That guy, I think, is was 5-1 at the time, and then now has won a fight since then. So he was a touted prospect, a guy that was expected to do well. And this guy was out there springing the upset. And now he's a massive underdog in this spot against a guy who's got 8 fights. And I do think, if you were to make a favorite on paper, you would definitely lean towards, the guy that they have pegged as the favorite. I just wouldn't put it out this wide on the expectation curve. I think you got to curb your enthusiasm, so to speak, on the heavyweights that are going to go out there and maybe make it a 15-minute closely fought striking affair. Maybe their ground game's a little bit unproven. I think all those things are cause for concern in this matchup. Then if we move along to the next one, guys, I think Chasen Blair is a solid enough fighter. I just think he's got the wrong assignment. I think that maybe he's brought back on the Contender Series next year. He gets a UFC contract. Maybe he's that guy. But I think right now there's one guy who's a little bit more primed and prepared, and I think it's Cody Steele. I think he's better at everything. Frankly, I think Chasen Blair, if you had to give him a little bit of credit, maybe he's a slightly better defensive striker, but even then, I don't know that that's really true. I just think both of them have some power in their hands. I think Cody's got a little bit more. I think Cody rolls with his shots a little bit better. I do think Cody is a guy that can implement a wrestling heavy game plan against Chasen Blair and take him down and do what he wants. But also I think that if he goes out there and tries to submit this guy, he will. So that's the way I see it, man. I think that Hassan Zada had some success against him. I think Cody Steele would brutalize Hassan Zada, honestly. So for me, that's the disparity I see here is Chasen Blair, when he started to get hit a little bit on the feet against Hassan Zada, he was willing to mix it up with the wrestling and the grappling. I think he's going to be weary about doing that with Cody Steele wisely, because if you do that with Cody Steele, he's got championship level accolades. He could go out there and slam you on your head or put you in a choke, put you in a limb lock and finish you. And I think that when you look at the striking, I kind of rate out the power as being on the Cody Steele side as well. I think both guys have power in their hands, but I think the guy with a little bit more dynamic foot speed is Cody Steele. I think he might be able to get in and out faster. I think he might be able to cut better angles. And I think Chasen Blair gets caught flat-footed in some of these striking exchanges. So for me, all those signs point to Cody Steele inside the distance. I think that is, one of my clearer reads on this card. But also, you just want to note Cody Steele did have, some setbacks. He's going to have to cut weight again. There are some things that I suppose work against him here, but I just think like skill for skill, based on what I saw on tape, I thought that Chasen Blair looked all right, but he's on the Cage Warrior scene, going out there, getting out grappled by Hassan Zada ultimately, and having really competitive striking exchanges. And I just think that that's a bad sign coming into this matchup. And then, guys, we've got a very credentialed kickboxer in Artem Vakitov taking on Islam Masrov. And I think that you favor Artem here as the better striker, but he's only had 3 professional MMA fights. His opponent has had 5 between pro and amateur. And it just seems to me like Artem getting here a little bit late in the game. Maybe his style isn't fully translatable to mixed martial arts, but what does he have? Punching power, the ability to throw kicks. He's dynamic. He can go out there and knock this guy out at 205 pounds. There's no doubt about it. Also, I've seen him throw pretty solid ground and pound, but he's fighting nobodies. He's never beaten anybody worth their salt in mixed martial arts. That's the truth. And Islam Masrov at least has gone out there against guys with a pulse, guys with a winning record in mixed martial arts, guys that are looking to make mixed martial arts their career and gotten wins. So for me, Islam Masrov is maybe the money line side at these prices. I think that Artem should be favored, and I do think he's a real prospect, but you just have to say, like, how high is your ceiling in this kind of situation? I don't think it's that high. So I'd rather be on a finish prop or something like that than I would just looking at the money line here for a guy in Artem who hasn't beaten anybody substantive yet and doesn't really have, in my view, the well-rounded tools to cover this kind of price tag long-term. But I'm not saying that Masrov blew my hair back. He just had an instinct for the grappling, was looking for guillotine chokes, was willing to get back up to his feet when taken down. And the opponents that Artem fought, none of those things are true, right? They didn't have any grappling to speak of. They were getting taken down and giving it up, absorbed a couple leg kicks and quit, just things that you don't really like to see in terms of how to gauge somebody's opposition. So in kickboxing, obviously you would favor Artem minus 5,000 here, but it's not really just a kickboxing match, and MMA fights in the Apex get dirty quick. Oftentimes, it's a small surface area. So unless Artem's on point with the footwork and lands everything clean in the first round, then I think he might get taken down or at least put in some ugly clinches early in this fight against the fence. And that's where we're going to find out some real answers about him. So I think, maybe looking to play some of these guys live, these big favorites, if they get resistance in round 1, that might be the way to get involved with these guys. But the big pre-fight lines, I think, are certainly dicey. Shout out to Sujit in the chat, says, love the show, Liam. Best write-ups in the game. I appreciate you big time. I do want to say, guys, if you have not been rocking with us over the last few weeks, that's okay. We will not hold it against you at all. But what we are going to do is just tune back in for a second to some of these previous write-ups that we've had on the show. Vallejo round 1 plus 300 from the document. Kevin Christian by sub in round 1 or 2 right from the document. Cash the sub at plus 320. Cash the round 2 at plus 550. All from the document. Frunza KO plus 350 and the money line. Prediction: Cutsy round 1 stoppage or Frunza money line upset. Round 2, 3 or decision. Like, we've been on point with how the dynamics are going to play out as well as who's going to win the fights. Week 7, week 8, exceptionally good reads. So Lord willing, knock on wood, we can keep the ball rolling. It's a little bit trickier this week, but I will have a betting strategy guide posted for all the channel members as well as the patrons. I will have a navigation document with all the information that I find useful when I'm starting to handicap these fighters. I'm going to have that up as well for channel members, for the patrons. If you guys want to show love and support, that's the easy way to do it. Otherwise, guys, a couple free ways to show love and support. Get subscribed to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Thank you. Get subscribed to Liam Picks Fights on YouTube. Thank you. Get a follow button on my guy at Gordo Gambles on social media. Myself at Liam Picks Fights, trying to give you guys knowledge on all these platforms as best we can. What we're always going to do is come back and say, hey, we got it right or we got it wrong. We'll always be accountable to our reads. We always have third-party tracking, guys, at betmma.tips, and or you can go back and look through every document. If you ever have questions, hey, can you send me what you had on this? I'm happy to do that. I'm very transparent with all my work, and I'll tell you when I get it right. I'll tell you when I get it wrong. But last couple weeks we've been dialed. Lord willing, we'll keep that going. God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of the show. Here's what I want to do. One last time. Gordo, please tell the people where they can find you, my brother. You gave your recap, but where can the people find you and all the great work you're doing this week?
The energy, man. I'm ready for some Tuesday night fights. I'll tell you that. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, for all those watching the Plays YouTube channel, appreciate you tuning in. I like the fact we can get them both going at the same time. Liam's a fantastic host. So no, I appreciate breaking down the fights. We got a couple of weeks left. Everybody, make sure to show Liam some love as well. Our boy Pierce should be back next week. We got our boy Adu, the Canadian fighter, back next week. We can talk about Canadian MMA. Life will be good. Be sure to tune in next week. My full slate of bets will be posted at Gambles Gordo on Twitter. I wish everyone the best of luck in all your betting endeavors, guys. Let's make some money.
I absolutely love it, my brother. And the other thing I want to mention, guys, I'm going to try and post a few things this week, absolutely free. So it's not, you don't have to click anything other than go to the Patreon, hit follow on the free stuff. And I will be posting a bunch of free information this week because I want people to get an idea of the things that I'm talking about on this show, the resource documents. I know that it sounds detail heavy. I think details are the key, right? Readers are leaders, note takers are money makers. We've got a lot of notes on fighters as well as notes on the individual matchup breakdowns, the betting strategy. Our last couple of weeks on the UFC as well, the idea boards have been crushing it. So every week before the event, I send out an idea board, all the different ways I would think to play on either side of the fight. And why? Because not everybody's going to agree on every fight. Even sharp people will disagree. But there can be plus EV ways to play both sides. We've talked about before. If you like Will Curry, you look at the early rounds. If you like DeJordan Santos, you look at him to upset and on the money line and by decision. These are the things that sharp gamblers are really thinking about, right? How can I play both sides? It's a numbers game. It's not a predictions business, right? So we'll always come to you guys and tell you, here's our predictions. Here's how we see the fight. But also we're going to try and give you sound betting advice. This is plus EV long-term. These are the kind of spots that win. And that's not always, here's my prediction. Here's my big brain galaxy take. And I know that's hard for people to wrap their head around sometimes, but that's the way I play the game. Everybody's got different approaches. But for me, 4 years in the green, I don't think it's an accident. And I do think it's because we take an unconventional approach, and that's the way we keep it going. So appreciate you all. I put 100 on Will. Hopefully it blesses me up. Hey, brother, hopefully that is, your we always think get the bad bets out so that way all the good bets are going to run. Your run is about to come positive, my brother, and that's what we're all looking to do. So thank you all for the support. If you don't mind, guys, couple quick asks on the way out. Drop a like, get subscribed to myself and Gordo, and come back next week for the finale, guys. Week number 10 should be the best show. We might have surprise guests. We might have a little bit of fun. We might have a little bit of drinking on the show as well, which we've done on occasion. So we'll have to hit the boys and see exactly what we can make happen, but we're going to make it special. And also, guys, make sure you're tuned into the channel this week. I said last week that past performance is not indicative of future results, but when you're going to bet on a Kevin Holland fight, call Big Mouth, okay? How many times do I have to predict a Kevin Holland fight in a row before people want to say, all right, I'm going to defer to this analysis? Roman Dolidze, we had him by sub against Tim Means. We had him inside the distance against Alex Oliveira. We had, Derek Brunson against him on the money line. We had, just go through the list. If there was a Kevin Holland fight, we knew what was going to go down. We knew it was going down last week. We haven't been wrong about Tatsuro Taira yet. Knock on wood that we could keep it rolling. But I'll tell you this, he's made me 23 units so far. So whether he wins or loses this weekend, we've got nothing but love for Tatsuro Taira. These are a couple of my guys in the 20-unit club. Neil Magny, there ain't that many of them, right? But when these weeks come around, Lord willing, we could turn it into a special one once again. I could tell you guys the last huge event we had this year, Tatsuro Taira versus Alex Perez. And Lord willing, this is a week to have another big one. So I appreciate all the support. I can't wait to talk to you guys all again next week about Contender, but make sure you're tuned into the channel this week because we're talking UFC Vegas 98, Tatsuro Taira, main event, title shot looming. Let's find out. Thanks, guys. God bless you all. See ya.